What's good, everybody, and welcome to an episode of the Is podcast with your host, yours truly, Jai Shields, here on a Monday, the 19th of May, the greatest month of the calendar year, 2025. We got a lot to do here on today's show. Obviously, my baseball team has fired their manager. Praise be to God, about time. Give my 2 cents on Brandon Hyde getting fired. Obviously, we have the conference final set in the National Basketball Association down to their final four. Tie a bow on the Nuggets and the Thunder series. NBA draft lottery. I did not get to that last week. I will give my 2 cents on the Dallas Mavericks winning the number one pick from last week's draft lottery. The 49ers extended Brock Purdy. I will give you my 2 cents on that for sure. Other baseball news, PCA has been out of this world for the Chicago Cubs. Some commentary on his elite play to start the 25 campaign, and obviously the Subway Series recap as Juan Soto, paging Juan Soto, he has been MIA for the New York Metropolitans for the better part of this first month and a half of his New York Met career. I'll give you my commentary on he. But let us begin with the breaking news that was on early Saturday afternoon that is going to consist of the meat and potatoes of this show, and that is Brandon Hyde being fired as manager of my Baltimore Orioles. And before I give you my 2 cents on that, and the Orioles going winless in their homestand over the past week through yesterday. They're in Milwaukee, and they 3 in Milwaukee, 3 in Boston over the Memorial Day weekend. Honestly, who cares? I'll give my 2 cents on the team specifically as another update, if you will. But in terms of the news of Hyde being fired, before I even get to that, first off, it's ironic because at about 9:38 on Friday, I uploaded the 40-second clip thereabouts of my rant I had last week of kicking Brandon Hyde out, kick Mike Elias out. This seems a joke, a disgrace. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Is that in the third? I put that rant up on Twitter at 9:38 Friday night. And I don't have the specific time when I put it up on Instagram, but I put it up on Instagram shortly thereafter. And I am amazed. Now, listen, it's me, some no-name podcaster, sportscaster, opinionist that has 1.3 thousand followers on Twitter, not even 500 followers on Insta. I'm in the grand scheme of things in the sports media industry, podcasting, YouTube, linear broadcasting on radio and television. I am about as small as a mustard seed, if not smaller than that. And I got to be honest with you. I am surprised that rant has gotten so much leverage as it's gotten me all throughout the course of the weekend. Did you guys know that rant, and by the time this episode gets uploaded onto YouTube, it might be more. Did you guys know that rant I uploaded? Now, this is what it did on Instagram. That rant has done 17.9 thousand views on Instagram. Probably by the time this comes out, it will most likely eclipse the 18,000 mark. That's you go back to every single, and I've been uploading these little rants of mine since the summer of 2020. I mean, for 5 years, I've been uploading these rants onto my Instagram page, which is going to be about 5 years old this upcoming July. That rant, the most viewed, the most listened to rant on my Instagram page at 17.9 thousand. I mean, I'm checking Instagram, once, twice an hour, and it's a new list of individuals that have liked the reel, that have commented. There's a handful of them have even click the follow, but I cannot. This little old Jai Shields in Baltimore, Maryland, and this rant has gotten nearly 700 likes damn near 1,000 shares and 17.9 thousand views. I mean, that for me, I mean, my jaw is on the floor, and 17,000 views on Twitter. So essentially, 24. Might as well round it up and say 25,000 people on those two apps have saw me yelling and screaming about my favorite baseball team. Somebody that has no big time following, no cash, no nothing, and 25,000 people, give or take, on Instagram and Twitter combined, clicked on that video. So from a personal perspective, it's humbling, and I am appreciative to those of y'all that that take the time. Whether you're bullshitting trying to pass the time or you're looking for extra sports or content to watch and follow, I appreciate obviously the love there. Let's keep it going. It's ironic because when I uploaded my rant back in March, it's kicking and screaming from the rooftops for the Bengals to lock in, get themselves together, and sign T. Higgins and Jamar Chase to their contract extensions. I believe I uploaded that on a Monday or a Tuesday, that rant. I think the episode was like from the weekend prior, and the day that I uploaded that rant was either Monday or Tuesday of that week when free agency opened up officially for the 25 NFL season. And then late Saturday night that weekend, they were all they were breaking news. They were signed, sealed, and delivered. And the Saturday before Selection Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, in early mid-March. And then I upload that rant literally before, and in the game against the Nationals, that disgusting ninth inning hadn't even played it, hadn't even happened yet. And I upload that rant on social media, and literally the following midday, around noon Saturday afternoon, I'm walking to my favorite bagel place during my lunch break. I'm at work. I'm walking to my favorite bagel place, and I get a notification, my Twitter notification on my Apple Watch, and it was in big bold. Before I even had a chance to see what it was big bold statement from the Baltimore Orioles in all caps. And I skim read that first line: Brandon Hyde dismissed of duties. My arms went up in the my arms went up in the air like that. And which takes me to my reaction and my thoughts on him being fired. I was on record on multiple occasions, especially in the last month and a half of this season and the back end of last year, after the Royals debacle, and even after the ALDS sweep against the Texas Rangers 2 years ago, that he had to go. He had to go. When you sit up and you watch how the 2025 and even in the back end of the 2024 Orioles played, and even the Orioles in the divisional series against the Rangers 2 years ago, it was apparent to see that this team needed an extra kick in the ass to get them over the hump from being a little train that was punching above their weight class to the big bag juggernaut that was going to have the target on their chest, that needed to graduate to that next level to capitalize on a championship window and to realize what it is that they have, so they can reach across that pylon to get to hopefully a World Series championship team. And Brandon Hyde, you could see, if you really locked in and paid attention and you watched this team attentively, you would have seen that and would have seen this coming from a mile away. Forget even the 2020. You want to say, okay, 2023, they were young, didn't know any better. 101 wins. It happens in baseball all the time. Rangers ended up winning the World Series. Bruce Bochy's one of the greatest, top 500 greatest managers of all time, and definitely one of the greatest managers in the history of baseball in the 21st century. You want to throw it out the window? Okay. You give him a pass? Okay, fine. I disagree. I'll be more than happy to argue and fight you off on it, but I'll concede that to you. 2023, 100, okay, fine. Because you knew coming into 2024, okay, fine. Making the playoffs, you make it, cool. But if you make it, you better find a way to at least win a series. at the bare bones minimum, win a playoff game, which is something that the team in 2023 failed to do. And they were uncompetitive in 2 out of the 3 losses in that series. You have a sensational start. You're on a pace, I believe at one point in time, this time last year, they were on a pace to win about 100 games again. Win 100 games again. They have a solid first half of June. They beat the piss out of they take 2 out of 3 from the Yankees, beat the piss out of them, winning by the final score, I believe, was 17-5. And then the team went to Houston, and then the team's play ever since, carrying into this year, has not been the same. It's been in the deepest of sewers. Somebody has to be held responsible for that. Now, and I got plenty to say about Mike Elias. Don't worry. Craig Kimbrell last year, this year Charlie Morton, and bringing back Kyle Gibb. We'll get to that. But last year, they had enough talent and played certainly at a strong capability at the back half of last year, where the excuse, well, what do you want him to do? Blame him. He didn't do enough at the deadline, which is all fair and valid. But the Orioles play prior to trading for Trevor Rogers, which is an egregious, going to go down as one of the worst trades in the history of the Orioles franchise. Before they traded for him, the team was still not on the up and up. And Craig Kimbrell's blown saves in the 9th innings be damned. I got 2 things for you. One, who is the idiot that was responsible for knowing that he had a flagrant liability on his team? Who was the one that was responsible for letting his flagrant biggest liability lose him games? That's not the GM's fault. That's the manager's fault. Their defensive efficiency was not what it was in June, July, and August, in September, compared to what it was in April and May. Their defense suffered, lack of attention to detail. Their fundamentals took a hit. They all of a sudden went these long spells where they just flat out couldn't hit. And when they could hit, it came in little once in a blue moon Halley's Comet spurts. And they were able to not put together any consistency, which falls on coaching. That's Brandon Hyde. That's his coaching staff's responsibility. That falls on coaching. When Anthony Santander was here, when Corbin Burns was here, I still saw the same flaws and the same problems exist with this team when those 2 guys were here last year. And I still see it when those guys are gone. You could tell when the Orioles would win games in spite of the moves or lack thereof from Brandon Hyde. Now the roster is not as good, thanks to the GM, and Brandon Hyde is not witty, savvy, or proactive enough to find a way to win games in spite of the roster's inefficiencies. I think I put out on a tweet, the 191 wins in the 2 seasons become null and void when you don't post in the postseason. Simple. I'd rather win 88 or win 91 games in the regular season, win 85, 88, 90, 91, 92, 93 games in the regular season, and win a playoff round or 2 than win 101 and have as many playoff wins in a given season in a team that finished with the worst record in the league. That's just how I am. Football, same thing. I'd rather go 10-7 like my Bengals did in 2021. I'd rather go 10-7 and play in the Super Bowl than go 13-4 or 15-2, get the 1 or the 2 seed, and go home in the first round or lose championship Sunday. So the idea we got to go out of our way to white knight for Brandon Hyde because he won the team over 100 games for the first time in 40-something years, while also failing to win a playoff series, and by virtue of that, failing to get the team to the World Series. I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it. I mean, literally, before I came up to do this show, my mother was going through old baby clothes that me, my brother, and sister wore when we were little kids 20-something years ago. And she pulls out an Orioles t-shirt about this big, an Orioles t-shirt. It's like, oh, my brother wore it. You know how old that shirt was she pulled out? 40-something years old. You wouldn't tell because it's in such pristine condition. Pulled out, and it was an Orioles t-shirt that's got, it was all orange, that's got Baltimore Orioles lettering, Orioles in white, Baltimore in black, with the, I wish I had this shirt upstairs with me. But the circular Orioles logo, the swinging Batman, the swinging batter logo. Do I have it one like it in my room? I don't think. Well, I got it. This logo right here with the circle that says Baltimore Orioles on it from 40-something years ago. You know who wore it? My father. Around the same time, 5 years old? He'd say, yeah. He was like, yeah, man, I remember I wore that shirt. You go to your grandmother's house, there's a picture of me at the beach, with swim trunks, and I got that shirt on. I was about 5 years old. You do the math. My father's, 47 years of age? You do the math. Last time, 5 years old, what year? 1983. 1983, conveniently, also the same year the Orioles won the World Series. So I'm not giving brownie points. I'm not giving, nothing. He did not win. He did not accomplish what he needed to accomplish. In those 2 years, his goal was to get the Orioles to the World Series. And I guarantee you, if he gets them to the World Series either last year or this year, and even the ALCS, if he got them to a game 6 or a game 7 in ALCS either this year or last year, I guarantee you he probably, maybe much to my chagrin, but I guarantee you he's probably still employed. But the fact that he came up small in big games, those 5 playoff games, think 5 playoff games, 4 of them were in his building, and he couldn't win not one game. That's unacceptable. That is completely and utterly unacceptable. And this pathetic start to the 2025 season, in terms of assessing Brandon Hyde's tenure here, that's nothing more than you pick the idiom. Either the shit hitting the fan or the chicken's coming home to roost. You pick one. But he had a lot better team than this one and still found a way to come up small. That's just the nature of the beast, people. It's just the nature of this business. If his teams were not uncompetitive and rudderless in the last 2 Octobers, maybe he still has his job. But when you win 191 games in the last 2 regular seasons, have 4 out of your last 5 playoff games in your building, and you are uncompetitive in 4 out of 5 of them, I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it. And 4 out of your 5 playoff games you had in your building, and your offense was completely anemic in every single one of those games. And then you turn around in this season, 2025, and it's deja vu for what we saw from this offense in the 2023 ALDS, and it relates to what we saw in the wild card series against Kansas City, and what we saw in September and August and July and late June of last season, which was a carryover from games 1 and 3 against the Rangers. A change has to be made. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. And I'll get to him, but we can blame Mike Elias all we want to the cows come home, and it is fair and valid criticism, especially and specifically when it comes to this year's team. But in fairness to Mike Elias, he put together a roster that won 101 games in the regular season in 23, and he put together a team that at least on the front end was talented enough to put themselves in position to win 91 games last year. Now, Craig Kimbrell, unforgivable. The fact that, again, I even said it at the time, prior to last season, how much of a waste of time that signing was. But for the Craig Kimbrell move he made, he also traded for and brought in Corbin Burns. You had an ace at the top of your rotation that stayed healthy for the majority of the season, for what I can recall. And you were in a tight race with the New York Yankees to win that division to the final week of the regular season. You don't win a division, fine. But you do get a wild card spot, and you had at maximum 3 playoff games in your building against the Kansas City Royals team, ladies and gentlemen, last year was not that good. You want to give them a break for the Rangers year before they won the World Series? Fine. Bruce Bochy, Hall of Fame manager. You can't pick the Kansas City Royals manager out of a lineup. And outside of the tremendous Bobby Witt Jr., that team was not good. They were uncompetitive against the Yankees for the most part in the ALDS. The Yankees handled them without even breaking a sweat in the ALDS. And in what was a weak American League last year, on Brandon Hyde's watch, the Yankees took the division from them and got to the World Series. Something the Orioles very easily could have done. Very easily could have done. Somebody's going to take the fall for it. They're not going to fire the GM after putting together a team winning over 190-something games. So who easier to replace? And also, based on precedent, we've seen it before, the manager needed to go. And he did. Repeated of the same cycle, same foolishness. How many times did I come on here and scream and yell during the summer months last year for the Orioles to fire the hitting coaches? Because their offenses were just so pathetic. Again, they didn't lose the series against City because they couldn't pitch, couldn't get guys out. They lost that series because they could not hit. Bobby Witt was the only Kansas City Royal that was productive. Position player that was productive in that series. They let one player dominate that series, and they really didn't do all that all a hell of a lot. So when you come into the season, though, for those disappointing and pathetic Octobers, that was because of coaching inefficiencies, not because of GM inefficiencies. Craig Kimbrell was off the team. Hated the fact he was on it to begin with. He was off the team last October. By last October. When you get your shit stuffed in back-to-back playoff years, you come into the following year, when you were very fortunate in my eyes to even return, you got to give me better than 15-28 heading into Saturday afternoon. Damn near 10 games out of first place. And a whole 5 games separating yourself between last and fourth in the division. The pressure was on coming into the season. Because we've seen it, especially in baseball, a lot of times where teams go through a rough patch, they go through a rebuild, they maybe even find a way to get into the playoffs one year or another, and they don't deliver. And the organization says, okay, that's fine. It was nice, cute memories, that's fine. But we got to go from the little train that could to the team that walks into the window of opportunity, grabs the opportunity by the balls, and they become the hunted, knowing how to be comfortable being the hunted rather than being the hunter. And the Orioles were not equipped for that, and that falls on the head and shoulders of the manager. Because the manager, like a head coach, is supposed to have the psychological and emotional pulse for the team. He's supposed to lead by example. He's supposed to be the one that's supposed to give the team the fire and brimstone speech to fire them up before a big time series, or to dig in their grits and to bust their balls when they play like crap. Supposed to encourage them, and they need to be encouraged in a fiery style, and he's supposed to get in their grits and rip them apart in a fiery style to wake them up. And at any point in time during last year's collapse, during the first 40-something games of this year, he flagrantly failed to do that. I mean, this is on Saturday. I'm going to go scroll all the way back Saturday and find it. I could not believe the quote that he gave after the way Friday night's game ended. I couldn't believe the quote that I read. I'm going to see if I can scroll here and find it. Okay. Quote, this is what he said after Friday night's pathetic loss to the Nationals when they were throwing the ball all over the place and had the bases loaded not once but twice and failed to break the game open, nursing a low-scoring one-run lead. I'm as frustrated as anybody, I try not to show that to the team. Again, I'm not Lombardi, I'm not Bill Belichick, but if there's anything that the manager of a baseball team is responsible for, it's to show them that it's basic human psychology. If 26 men on a professional sports team sees that their head coach, their manager is pissed off because they feel like they're playing below their potential and they're blowing and squandering an opportunity, if they see that, something within them, if they have a pulse and if they have a sense of pride about themselves, something within them will bubble up inside and says, damn, Skip's, yeah, he's pissed off. He's not, he's annoyed that we're not playing as well as we should. This is, if it's getting at him and he even though he plays a hand in this, but he's not out there on the field with us. If he's that bothered by it, we gotta. If he's showing that much heart and soul and passion, he cares. We're the ones that are actually out there on the field competing. We gotta show that same fire. We gotta show that same grit. We got it. We got. If he acts that way, we gotta act that way. And if not, out in the open publicly, we got to internalize that and let his outburst, whether it's kicking a Gatorade jug, cussing up a storm, breaking bats, whatever it takes, flipping the table in the team cafeteria, whatever the case might be, we got to take that and use that to spark our fire. Because as of now, any self-prescribed methods we've been using has not worked. I mean, if I said it in my tweet, I'll say it again. If Bill Parcells can throw a trash can full of trash at the 86 Giants, team that had multiple Hall of Famers on it, including one of the greatest football players of all time, and Lawrence Taylor, who won the MVP that year. If he can throw trash at the 86 Giants, Brandon Hyde, while he was employed, could have kicked over a Gatorade jug, gotten in his players' faces, and cussed them up and down the wall like a drill sergeant. I'm sorry. These are not 14 and 15 and 13-year-olds at the Little League World Series of Williamsport. These are grown-ass men making six figures and higher to play a sport for a living. As long as you don't cross the line of disrespect and insulting them, they can take it. They can take hearing you're playing like bleeping trash. You guys need to wake the bleep up. This is bleeping ridiculous. As long as you don't cross that line of disrespect, they can take a tongue lashing. They can take being cussed up and down the walls based on their pathetic play. They can take it. Either they've heard it before or they need to hear it because they'll jar them a little bit and health and in a healthy fashion bruise their ego. I think there's an appropriate time to show that to the team, but I try to also be as consistent as I can as well. Well, I understand not being something that you're not, but at some point you kind of have to be a little bit outside of your personality to get the team's attention. I mean, I don't know how many America's games I've watched where the championship NFL teams are telling their story or giving their little tidbits about about the temperament of their coach, and I say, he's a pretty nice, mild mannered guy, but oh man, when he's in a cranky, pissy mood, it wakes you up a little bit. I understand why Brandon Hyde literally couldn't do the same thing. You don't have to. I'm not saying you have to change who you are as a person. I'm not saying you have to be essentially, baseball's version of Parcells or Nick Saban or John Gruden, where you're just pissed off and digging in players' asses all the time verbally. But there is a time and a place where you have to, he said, well, I think there's an appropriate time. Well, Brandon, what was the appropriate time? Your season was going to hell in a handbasket. You're well over 10 games under 500. You're damn near, at the time, it was a dozen games out of first place. I mean, when was the appropriate time? What, in August when the season is already where your eulogy for the season's already been written? When was the time to hold the team accountable? I understand, don't do it, the first week into the season, but damn, you were a month and change into the season. Things were not going the way it was supposed to go. What were you waiting for? An invitation? We're super positive in the dugout. The Care Bears toxic positivity crap was not working. This quote, literally, I read it literally Monday morning, hours before he was officially let go. This is not the responsibility of the GM. The GM's job is to not be the lead psychologist and to be the motivator for a baseball team. His job is to put the team together, put the best team on the field, and that is it. And even if you want to get into the analytical tinkerings with lineup cards and who to go to in the bullpen, even if you want to go into that realm, even this isn't even his job. The human part of motivating players, the human, emotional, psychological element of handling 26 grown men, it will never change. And when it does, they'll get rid of the position of manager altogether. But the reason why still in this analytical age and the sabermetrical age of Major League Baseball it still exists is because of stuff like this. You got to be able to rally your troops. And the dull, gray, mundane, monotone mumbling that he carried himself with, on top of the toxic positivity Care Bears crap, that at any point was not helping this team win games. It wasn't helping them win games in the month of May of this year. It wasn't helping them back in April. It wasn't helping them in the 48 hours in October. It wasn't helping them in September. It wasn't helping them last August, last July, and late last June. Either adjust or get the hell out. And he refused to adjust. And if that means you make life a little bit uncomfortable for your players for a week until they get their asses in gear, you know what? So be it. But to continue in the hamster wheel of insanity was not going to cut it for this team. And it clearly didn't cut it for the superior team last year. So you come into this year with an inferior group compared to the group you had before, and it didn't work. And then you're going to sit there and try the same stupid methods with the roster that's not as good compared to the one that you had last year. And people wonder why I was so frustrated. This is why. If he was pulling out all the stops and you could visibly see from the element of the game we're allowed to see, if you could visibly see that Brandon Hyde is doing everything in his complete power to turn the season around, and it still wasn't working, then I could cut him some slack. But the guy at time, and why I say the quote, we care about this more than they do, because I kept on seeing the same patterns. He was hell-bent on my way of working when it was clear and apparent to everyone that it wasn't. And you can't just stand idly by and 10 toes down and be stubborn and arrogant enough to say that my way is going to work when the track record and the numbers and the stats in front of me are clearly showing me that it's not. If he'd have pulled out all the stops and just done whatever differently he could to change the tide of this team, whether it be currently this year or the back end of last year, and he still was getting bad results, okay, fine. But I do not, and honest to God, I understand he is far from one of my favorite individuals in sports. But I gotta be fair, no BS here. But honest to God, Hand to God, I do not, within my heart, within my gut, within my soul, believe it. This man did everything, honestly, he could have done to help change the direction of this team, whether it's this year or especially last year. I don't get the feeling he did everything and anything he could have and should have done to help change the direction of this team. I don't think he did. And this quote right here incriminates him. Read it. This quote right here incriminates him and confirms that he was just content with the same old song and dance. And baseball, like any other sport, it's a game of adjustments. And that doesn't always mean X's and O's and sitting in the film room watching and seeing, when to minimize your leg kick against a given starting pitcher that throws 99 without breaking a sweat. It's more than that. Sometimes the adjustments come in the intangible part of the game, the part of the game that isn't measured by any specific stat on a given stat sheet. And that not just this goes for players, that goes for coaches too. Everything rises and falls on leadership. I keep on trying to tell you guys sit up here and think that coaching doesn't matter, and it does. Yes, the players got to execute. Yes, the GM's got to put the best team on the field on paper. But if coaching doesn't matter, why do they still exist? The position, the occupation would be obsolete if coaching did not exist. And the Orioles were a poorly coached baseball team longer and more consistently than they were a properly coached baseball team. He got outmanaged in circles by Bruce Bochy in the divisional series, and we saw the same old pathetic bad habits from this team from the Houston series in late June all the way through this past Friday. Felix Bautista taking a sweet time running to first base and then realizes he didn't get there in time. Runner is safe, and then he takes, his staring off into his brain is somewhere else but in the moment, waits 2-3 seconds longer than he should have, while the runner from second base running on contact with 2 outs is coming around third, slides in safely to score. That ain't got nothing to do with Mike Elias. Felix Bautista is one of the best players on the team. That debacle in the ninth inning with Felix was all coaching. Or if not coaching strictly on the players, it's something that doesn't happen if a team is properly coached. If a team is locked in, focused on the details, has an astute attention to detail, and is disciplined, it keeps their head in the game at all times, that's something that does not happen on a well-coached team's watch. I'm sorry. That ninth inning, and it's along with this quote, that ninth inning was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. He probably, with Rubenstein in the building, was fired because of how that ninth inning went. That should have been Felix recovering time out of the inning, or he doesn't recover in time, looks runner back to third base, runners on the corners, 2 out, maybe the Orioles get out of it, and they probably walk off and win the game. But the fact that game that the Orioles were in well control of throughout the majority of the night went so south so quickly based on pure piss poor coaching is why Brandon Hyde got fired. And if you can't see that, I cannot help you. Because that ninth inning literally encapsulated how the Orioles have played since late June of last year. It did. I mean, I can't tell you how many Oriole games I've watched, and I've seen 1, 2, or God forbid, some nights 3 sitting in the error column. When I see a team magically become so undisciplined and so unfocused in terms of the lack of execution within the basic fundamentals of the sport, I'm sorry, I go to coaching with that. Especially when I didn't see it from this team in 2023, and I didn't see it for the first half of the 2024 season, and then I all of a sudden magically out of the clear blue sky see it in 24, and it carries in the 2020. That's a coaching issue. I don't care what anybody says. That is a coaching issue. I say it in football, and I'll say it here when it comes to my baseball team. The Shannon Sharp line, I think, from either one of his coaches in Denver, either Dan Reeves or Shanahan, doesn't matter. It applies. When players play, when football teams got they undisciplined, lead the universe in penalties, undisciplined crap in between whistles. When baseball teams run themselves into outs, commit routine errors, hand over fist, you're either coaching it or you're condoning it. You're either coaching them to play undisciplined and to play unbuttoned up, or you're condoning it by not saying or doing anything. And that quote from Brandon Hyde, this one right here, is him condoning the crap that I saw specifically from this team on Friday night. Literally. He incriminated himself with that ninth inning and with this quote right here. So I don't know what more you want. Is he the only person at fault for the Orioles being an unwatchable, unmitigated, abominable disaster? Absolutely not. It's an organizational failure. But for those of y'all that are aloof into thinking he had nothing to do with this team's shortcomings, you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. And again, if Brandon Hyde went out, won a playoff series or two, either last year or in 2023, more likely than not, he'd have been given rope for this season. Maybe not by me personally, but for everybody else, especially in the Orioles, he would have been given a longer leash. When you don't post when you put in the most ideal of scenarios in the years past, and you turn around and you don't post again, even with the roster inefficiencies, somebody is going to have to take the fall. And the GM should go too. But everybody and their mother knows the likelihood of managers getting fired in season is slimmer than the chances of managers being fired in season. It's just the nature. It's just the nature of the beast. GMs go in the off season. Managers, if things get really bad, more likely go during the season. But he incriminated himself. He incriminated himself with that. How many times did I come on here? I played you guys this press conference after the loss on Thursday when they lost to Minnesota. I mean, the same old boring, dull, mundane answers. And then when he was really pissed off, he was really annoyed how short-tempered he would get with the media for asking basic questions, and he, seemed like offensive or aghast by the question. I mean, come on. He did it to himself. Mike Elias may be the primary villain for this team being where it is. For the primary suspect for digging the ditch. But as far as I'm concerned, Brandon Hyde helped give him the shovel. And if you don't see where he falls short in this team's failures, you're not paying attention. I'm sorry, you're not. You're not. He was, in my opinion, he was fortunate and blessed enough for him to make it through the 19, 20, and 21 seasons unscathed. Some baseball teams, his ass would have been shown out the door after the 2021 season. Didn't. And again, the Yankees, they played a tremendous divisional series against the Mariners, actually won a playoff game or two, I believe, in that series. And what happened? Steinbrenner showed Buck Showalter the door and brought in Joe Torre. How many times we see in baseball the team that makes it through the rebuild, makes it to the playoffs or whatever, they don't win or they come up short, and just for the sake of change, just to get a new voice in to take the team over the hump, they change managers. Or in football with the Bucks, Tony Dungy, appreciative of what they did, got them to a certain point, couldn't get over that hump. They needed a new voice to help them become a champion. They let him go and hired John Gruden. They ended up winning. I'll be here all day and night. It happens in sports all the time. And it should have happened, quite honestly, as early as after the 2023 season. And damn, Skippy should have happened after the 2024 ALWCS. And it didn't. And the Orioles ended up paying for it with what they got in front of them this year. So, it is what it is. I'm not going to cry river for a guy that, that made a handsome living, essentially, for the most part, losing games for my beloved baseball team. I take this shit personally. So, I'm not crying a river, crying boo-hoo for Brandon Hyde. He'll live. The Orioles, they did not let Joe Adabelli or Earl Weaver go. Let's take it easy. So let's take it easy. Couple of numbers. Orioles 6-game losing streak, longest since May of 2022, right before Adley Rutschman's debut. They were swept only 3 times in the first 153 series of the Rutschman era. They've now been swept 4 times in the last 7 series. Worst run differential in the history of the franchise through 45 games to begin the season. The 56 Orioles negative 64 run differential. The 55 Orioles had a negative 76 run differential. The 2019 Orioles negative 55 run differential, the same as this year's motley crew. And the all-time worst, the 88 Orioles, who went the first 21 games of the year without winning a game, had a run differential to the first 45 games of minus 116. And you take a look at the Orioles. Speaking of the 88 team, they were 9-36 through the first 45 games. They win 54 and 107. 55 Orioles win 14-31, finish the season 57 and 97. 2018 Orioles started 14-31, final record 47 and 115. 2010 14 and 131. That was the year they fired the manager and brought in Buck August of that year. They went 66 and 96. 2019 15 and 30, 54 and 108. 15 and 30 through the first 45. Obviously, the Orioles, they're done. They're finished. They're not making the playoffs. I don't hear none to talk Gunnar Henderson. Like I heard, the team leads the league in quotes more so than they lead the league in wins. It's just, especially lead the team in wins, when they're trailing after 6 or 7. That's another thing. The Orioles, all they used to do in 22 and 23 and in the front end of the 2024 season is come back and win games. Walk-off wins left and right. Cedric Mullins having a few, Rutschman. All they used to do is win games and come from behind fashion. They're down 3, down 4 through the first 6 or 7 frames. No problem. Brush dirt off the shoulders. They find a way to come back and win the game. Offense sleepwalks through the first 8 innings, and it explodes in innings either 8 or 9, and they win a game they had no business winning from the start. It used to be all they did. Used to be all they did in 2022. Used to be all they did in 2023. And used to be all they did in April and in May, and even the first half of June in 2023, in 2024. Highlighted by the first one they got in that Yankee series in June, when Boone took Garrett Cole out of the game too early. Ramon Urias hit a 3-run home run shortly thereafter, giving the lead. Stanton and his heroics come back to tie the game up. The Orioles scored 2 in extra innings, and they ended up winning that game. And the team hasn't been the same since. Used to be their calling card. Their calling card, their quote-unquote claim to fame as a ball club was stealing victory from the jaws of defeat. And now all of a sudden they can't do that if they went up against a JV high school team and they were down 3-0. The game would be over. It would be over. They fall into a 3-0, 2-0, or in this weekend's case, a 6-0, 7-0 hole through the first frame or 2 of a ball game. It's game over. It's game over. No grit, no heart, no toughness, no clutchness. Those intangibles, reflection of the leadership. Everything rises and falls on. I don't know how many times I got to tell you guys this. Players are at fault, yeah, and now the griddle's going to be a little bit more so on the player because Tony Mansolino is a manager in name only. He's just a placeholder. Now it's on the responsibility for the players themselves. Enough talk, enough of the quotes. Dig deep and find a way to make your decrepit, floundering season respectable. It's on the play. It was on the players before. Now it's definitely on the players now. They can sit up here and give me all the quotes they want, where how sad and how sorry they are and regretful they are for their poor play getting Brandon Hyde fired. Well, damn it, I haven't seen it yet, and the man's been out of a job for the last 48 to 50 something hours. So I still haven't seen that regret with the new manager because I'm seeing the same slop. Now, Saturday, Kyle Gibson stinks, had no business being on the team. That's a Mike Elias failure. And by the way, if you're Mike Elias, you fire, and this is also in the aftermath, they were in Anaheim last week, not this past week, but Mother's Day week. In Anaheim, and they said, and even in the homestand before they went to the West Coast, he said that, confidence in Brandon. Now teams do it all the time, so that's not the violation in all this. But I mean, again, Brandon Hyde, as much as I couldn't stand him, as much as he was a bad manager, as we've clearly have seen the last 2 days since his firing, Mike Elias is severely at fault for this team being in the shit. Severely at fault. Kimbrel last year, bringing in, wasting his time with Charlie Morton this year, a move I said right here on this show at the time would never work and was a pathetic, egregious, spit in your face type of move towards the fan base in the aftermath of losing Corbin Burns to free agency. I said I got no problem with Tony Taylor's walking, and it turns out, again, I was right. No problem with letting him walk. The odds of him having this good of a season again over the age of 30 as a DH, slim to none. When your team needs to be a little bit more contact oriented, strive a little bit more for batting average and on base percentage and OPS rather than being so wrapped up in leading the universe in home runs. Turns out at the end of the day, I was right. Tony hasn't done a damn thing in his short, young career as a Toronto Blue Jay. But I said, the caveat was you had to go out there and whatever it was going to cost you, go out there and bring in a Teoscar Hernandez. Who did he bring in? Tyler O'Neill, who, as I well documented on last week's show, he's awful. He hasn't done a damn thing with the bat in his hand since the opening weekend of the season. He's been on the IL now twice in the span of the last 3 weeks. He can't hit his weight. He's a career 240-something hitter that has a laundry list of an injury history. And I said it at the time. I don't second guess. These were first guesses. And Mike Elias, in his ignorant, arrogant, stupid ass backwards ways, thought his way was the highway. He knew more. He's the smartest guy in the room with his Yale diploma, and turns out, look where it's gotten him. Because I tell you right now, this season goes the way it goes, his ass is going to be next, or there'll be a riot downtown on the corner of 333 West Camden Street, because his ass is next. Because this shit don't make no damn sense. It doesn't. He fires Brandon Hyde, which I was in favor of, but the appropriate adult and professional thing to do, especially when you make the move during a homestand, would be to hold a press conference. And that news came out 4 hours before game time. I shouldn't have to read Mike Elias' thoughts through a tweet. You want to announce it through a tweet? Fine. Immediately after that, 12:15, 12:30, 1 o'clock should have been Mike Elias, David Rubenstein joint press conference to address any questions and to give their statement from the horse's mouth in front of the camera, behind the microphone. Should have been hold the press conference to address why they decided to fire Brandon Hyde, their explanation as to why Mancelino becoming the manager going forward, and how they're going to take a look at the rest of the season. Not hiding behind some little dumbass statement, that I got to read on my lunch break from the Orioles Twitter and Instagram pages. And we still haven't heard a word from them since, and it's Monday. It's Monday. I haven't heard a word from them. Or the owner, too. But the owner didn't. The owner signed off on it, but the owner didn't make this call. Mike Elias made this call while putting out Kyle Gibson, Charlie Morton before he got relegated to the bullpen, and today, with our wonderful luck, Dean Kramer. He's trotting out this garbage on top of Tyler O'Neill, who stinks, Ramon Liriano, who stinks, Jorge Matei out when he was getting starts because Wonder Boy Brandon Hyde was throwing him bouquets, having him. That's another thing. How in the world you expect Brandon Hyde to keep his job? What sane individual thinks he should have been worthy enough to keep his job when he was starting Jorge Mateo in center field over Cedric Mullins, who again at the time, one more time, was second in the American League in RBIs through the first 2 weeks of the season, was one of the hottest hitters of all of baseball. He's on the bench, one of your better defensive outfielders too, by the way, I might add, especially with his glove. He's sitting on the bench, and Jorge Mateo's playing out of position in center field against a team that bounced you from the postseason the fall prior. I mean, just like what serious individual that's trying to win baseball games and trying to preserve their employment does stupid backward stuff like that? On top of having him platoon between your two infield cornerstones and Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holliday at shortstop and at second base. And getting platooned left and right for a bum that can't hit, can't run the bases, does nothing right, and can't even have a batting average of $175. And people, well, why did Brandon Hyde get fired? Look at the garbage lineup cards, watch the games, and you'll put two and two together. But getting back to Mike Elias, you also played a hand in this, a bigger hand, some might say, I might add. Garbage starting rotation, you had all winter to fix the rotation. Even if you brought back Corbin Burns, you should have brought in another arm. You should have brought in another arm. Mike Elias couldn't have thrown a bag at Max Fried. Couldn't have thrown a bag at Max Fried. Couldn't have thrown a bag at Max Fried. Couldn't have traded for Garrett Crochet. Give him Kobe Mayo and I don't know. Give him Kobe Mayo and Ryan Mountcastle for Garrett Crochet. Couldn't have traded for Crochet. Couldn't have thrown a bag at Max Fried in free agency. Had all winter to replace Corbin Burns and also beef up the rotation, knowing the injuries that you had. When you didn't have Grace Rodriguez for the back half of last year, on top of the issues with Kyle Bradish last year, and whether you either would have came back, which he didn't, either or, you had John Means also MIA. Either MIA because he was no longer employed by the team because he was a free agent, or he had, around this time last year, had to get shut down for the year because why? Needed another Tommy John surgery. Couldn't complete his start against the St. Louis Cardinals last May. So you knew going in, the rotation had to look 180 degrees different than what it was this year. And you were content with, given if he was healthy coming out of spring training, running it back with Trevor Rogers, Dean Kramer, who's run his course here as an Oriole, clearly. Charlie Morton, and as of the last month or so, Kyle Gibson. I mean, that is, if that's not a fireable offense in and of itself, I don't know what is. Forgetting the fact that you brought in Tyler O'Neill to replace Anthony Santa. I mean, just disgusting. You couldn't have a worse offseason if you tried. You couldn't. And again, this is not a second guess. This is a first guess. I said this all the way back in freaking January, the weekend of the NFL playoffs. I was so ahead of the curve on this. You fire Brandon Hyde and you don't have the balls to meet with the media to explain your decision making and to literally take your lumps, because this garbage roster is your responsibility. The team being poorly coached, the bad fundamentals, the lack of hustle, the lack of heart, the lack of competitive spirit when they're down in games, that's the manager's fault. The team being down 6-7-0 back-to-back games because they got no starting pitching to get us. Now, Eflin, I give him a pass. He's been a good Oriole for the most part. Okay, you want to give a pass yesterday? Okay, fine. But Saturday, that's your fault. Your fault. Who wasted, by the way, a 3-year something contract paying Tyler O'Neill, who's been on a DL now twice in the last month? That's not Brandon Hyde. That is you. Tyler O'Neill, Mike Elias is you. Ramon Laureano is you. Trading away Kyle Stowers so you can't get out if you couldn't get out with the ghost of Walter Johnson while Tyler, whatever the hell his name is, Rogers can't get anybody out on rehab assignments in AAA is you. Wasting $50 million on Craig Kimball last year is you. Wasting $50 million on Charlie Morton this year is you. Have the guts, have the balls, and the spine to face the music. Nobody cares about going on your little media tours with these dopey podcasts. I'm not interested. Go at the desk, behind a backdrop, in front of a packed media room, and face the damn music like a man. Because this roster being the likes of the 2018 Orioles is on your shoulders. It's on your shoulders. Thinking you're going to get something that you're not going to get with Dean Kramer is on you. Running it back with an old geezer and Kyle Gibson is you. Bringing in Charlie Morton and an ERA over 4 who's 100 trillion years old when he was pathetic and then hold up his end of the bargain for the Atlanta Braves last year and then you turn around and bring him in to replace Corbin Burns. That is you. That's you. Not Brandon Hyde, not the coaching staff, not on the players. Bad players are failing. That is the players' fault in a vacuum, but who brought him in on a contending team? If Charlie Morton was playing like this, or if Kyle Gibson was playing like this for the Rockies or for the White Sox, for the Pirates, who would care? You brought him in thinking good and well in the back of your mind they were going to deliver a positive contribution to a team that you thought had the makings of a World Series championship team. Disgraceful, pathetic, inexcusable, and unacceptable garbage. You better pray the Orioles pull a miracle out of their ass and make it to the postseason this year. Because if they finish in last place with over 100 losses and the rate is going, it's most likely going to happen. If this shit happens, you better make like the Colts in 83 and slickly moonwalk your ass out of town before the public gets to you, because it's not going to be a pretty sight. As far as I'm concerned, your ass should be out of a job right now, like right this second. I know what I said about in-season GM firings not occurring, but this is ridiculous. This is flagrant GM malpractice. It doesn't get more disgusting and more embarrassing than this. You tanked this team's season and you ruined it. Forget Memorial Day. You had this team's season in the sewers by Easter. It's a joke. A joke. We start there. Orioles, I won't be taking up a whole lot of extra future show time talking about them, but I wouldn't have talked about them this weekend on the show today if Brandon Hyde hadn't gotten fired. But how do I not bring it up? Obviously, here to start the show today, and in large part why I wanted to save it for later in the show, but another reason why I didn't wait till later to address this, because what is there else to talk about? I saw Scotty Scheffler win the PGA Championship in a runaway down in Charlotte. I mean, if those who watched, I don't know if many care, but Obviously, he gets his major with the PJ under his belt. So congratulations to Scotty, but that wasn't exactly riveting golf this weekend down in the second Queen City. And then obviously the other big time event, I can't talk, and you got the wrong show if you want me to break down the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. I'm sorry. But the other big time news in sports from a nationwide perspective is the Game 7 that was uneventful between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets. Thunder winning in a blowout. Give Aaron Gordon credit with that bad hamstring. Originally, we thought there's no way in hell he was going to play. He at times was the Nuggets' second best player on the floor. Obviously, earlier in this series, he had the game winner, and then in the first round series against the Clippers, he had that buzzer beater in that classic game that Saturday afternoon. But he only took 4 shots, 2 of 4 from the field, only played 25 minutes, did rack up 11 rebounds. So give him credit for giving it a go, but I mean, he was severely compromised in the game yesterday afternoon. Thought the Denver Nuggets got out to a 26-21 lead there through the first quarter, and then the Thunder turned it on in the second with 39 points and didn't look back. Give the Thunder credit. This is a game they had to win. Game 7 in your building, 1 seed. I understand Nuggets, the champions from 2 seasons ago, but like I said with the Orioles, nobody cares about 68 wins or having a win total in the 60s, or even if you're Golden State with the 70-something. Nobody cares, especially you're the 1 seed. Nobody cared with Cleveland, and nobody's going to care about you unless you're able to deliver the goods in postseason time and get yourself at the bare bones minimum to a conference final. But they handled their business, did their job. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was magnificent, 12-19 from the field, damn near perfect from 3, walked away with 35 points on the afternoon. Jalen Williams was sensational, 10-17, walked away with 24 points on 5 rebounds and 7 assists. Chet Holmgren had a double-double, 11 rebounds, 13 points, was 4 of 9 from the field. The team, was good from the free throw line. They just played a crisp basketball game. Excellent defensive job. Nikola Jokic only took 9 shots. They absolutely, the fact that they had Alex Caruso shutting down Nikola Jokic, only took 9 shots yesterday afternoon. A quiet 20-point performance from he. Jamal Murray did next to nothing. 1 of 8 from 3, 6 of 16 from the field. He just had an atrocious performance along with the likes of Michael Porter Jr., who did not shoot the ball well at all. 3 of 8. Missed all 4 3-point shots he took. He also was substandard. Russell Westbrook coming off. It's fun. You hate Sandy because he's a hell of a competitor, and from the outside, he seems like a likable guy. But Russell Westbrook, if you have him on your basketball team come playoff time, he's going to lose you as many playoff games in series as he's going to win for you. And it's no coincidence that he's never won an NBA championship in his career, because coming off the bench, he was dreadful. 2 of 7 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3, did nothing else. Only 2 assists, 5 rebounds, 6 points. You care about the plus minus stat. He had a minus of 34 under. So he just had a dreadful game all around. And what was a season that felt like it was lost the moment they fired Michael Malone with less than a week to go in the regular season. They were able to win a playoff series, force the number 1 seed to a game 7, but the Nuggets go quietly into the night to Cancun for 2025, and we'll see them coming up this fall later on this calendar year, but obviously late next season. So before we talk about the Thunder, give little taps for the 2024-25 Oklahoma City, the 2024-25 Denver Nuggets, as we often do, and the Celtics, by the way, who lost Game 6. So for the Celtics and the Nuggets, sayonara, Cancun on 3. So we play taps for the Nuggets and for the Boston Celtics. The Celtics, they were able to win Game 5, which, like I said last week, shocked me and didn't shock me. It shocked me on the fact that the Knicks, you figure when they smelt blood in the water and they've, heard all year long, especially including by yours truly, that they're not as good as Boston, and they're able to take the first two games of the series and then absolutely dominate in game number 4. The Tatum injury had absolutely, the game was over by the time Tatum tore his Achilles in the fourth quarter. But I was shocked on the fact they did not put the stake through them the first time. The Knicks, they love and they obviously, the numbers show, they're a better basketball team on the road than they are at home at MSG. So I was surprised that they did not deliver the final death blow in game 4, but I also wasn't surprised because you figure if there's ever a game that the Celtics are going to win basically based off of pure testosterone, emotion, and adrenaline, with their loyal soldier Jason Tatum gone for the rest of their finite playoff run, and obviously through the 25-26 season, you'd figure they'd say, hey, at home, they hadn't won a game at home in that series to that point, that particular moment in time. They're going to galvanize and rely upon one another, and they were going to, have one final shindig of a nice home victory before they met their fate. Obviously, Game 6 at MSG. But, I mean, losing in a second round, not something to be proud of when you're the defending champion, especially when they beat the New York Knicks like a drum throughout the course of the regular season. So that's very embarrassing and humbling from the Boston Celtics side of things. I don't know what the opposite of stubborn, the antithesis of stubborn. I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but they have to be that, at least in terms of their coaching philosophy as a basketball team in 25 and 26. They did not lose this series because of game 6. They did not lose this series arguably because of game number 4, because that was a tight game till late fourth quarter and the Knicks took it. They didn't lose that series because of game 4. They didn't lose that series because of game number 6. They lost this series going into a 2-0 hole, losing 2 games back to back in their building via the exact same method, and the coaching staff and the players themselves being so hell-bent and stubborn on making the necessary, like all comes back with the Brandon Hyde and the Orioles. It feels like it comes full circle back to them digging your heels in and being so damn stubborn and hell bent on, this is how we're going to operate. This is our identity. We're going to win games because of doing this, and we're not going to change who we are. The way that we're going and the way we're going about our business is working. And how dare anybody, challenge our way of thinking and try to convince us of otherwise. Well, look what you get. With the Orioles, with my baseball team, and how Brandon Hyde went about his business, it got him fired, and how the Celtics went about their business as a basketball team and their offensive philosophy, it got them to Cancun in a 6-game series. And honestly, should have been 5. Honestly, like if Tatum's injury does not happen, they maybe probably lose game 5, knowing how they played in the first 2 games of that series, because it's just, you hoist up 90 trillion threes and they're not falling in more than more. You have a 50 to 60% rate of the threes not falling, if not more. You got to change up and do something different. The isolation basketball, where it's just 3-point contests and we hoist up 90 trillion threes, when the Knicks were giving you the paint just on a silver platter the first 2 games of the series, and you refuse not to take. That's why they lost the series. They lost the series with their pathetic 3-point shooting and their lack of adjustments offensively in games 1 and 2 of this series a week and a half going on 2 weeks ago. That's why the Celtics lost this series. They didn't lose the series because of the Knicks going off in the final few minutes of game number 4 at MSG in the fourth quarter. They didn't lose this series with their blowout loss in game number 6 on Friday night. They lost this series because they fell into an 0-2 hole because Joe Mazzulla and company was hell-bent on shooting up literally 100 threes, even though they only made combined 25 of them between the 2 games. Your stubbornness, your arrogance, it comes back to bite you in the ass. I mean, it's the pride being one of the 7 deadly sins is not by coincidence. and it was a deadly sin for the Celtics to start in this series to the first two games. Lack of offensive creativity. You'll hoist them 90 trillion threes, maybe drive inside and get yourself a nice easy jumper on the elbow, or have Al Horford. I understand Porzingis was a no-show. I'm not in, like I said it at the time. I say it again. I'm not interested. They gave you the paint wide open multiple times. Karl Anthony Towns, you bullied him and beat him like a drum throughout the course of the regular season. Find a way, make necessary adjustments, sans Porzingis, and do it again. They lost that series with their pathetic performances in games 1 and 2, not because of their losses in games 4 and 6 at Madison Square Garden. They at least split the first two games in their building. Maybe, even with Tatum going out, maybe they win this series. If nothing else, there probably would have been a seventh game, if nothing else. But they went quietly into the night because they essentially gift wrapped the series on a silver platter with their pathetic performances in the first two games of the series. Gift wrap it to them. So, and in terms of what the Denver Nuggets do going forward, I'm looking and I'm seeing. You take a look at them. They had their projected salary $201 million. The tax threshold of $187.8 million, including bonuses. They don't have any draft capital heading into the draft coming up this offseason. They have free agents in Westbrook, DeAndre Jordan, Sarkic, PJ Hall, Spencer Jones, Trey Alexander, among others. They're stuck with where they are essentially. Let Russell Westbrook walk, but this is going to be their team. No two-way players on their starting five. This is going to be their team going forward. So I don't know who you're going to find as a head coach. To be quite honest with you, who you going to, I don't know. The hot commodity off the top of my head in terms of the NBA head coach that teams must have heading into the 25-26 season. But, you just run it back, get healthy, get off your feet, figure out what the hell you're going to do with Westbrook, find yourself a coach. Do you stick with Adelman? I mean, time will tell what they're kind of at a standstill right now. Kind of at a standstill. Roster is not going to change that much this year coming into next. Maybe stick with him or go outside, find another voice, and cross your fingers and hope you get a better 25-26 season. I mean, in terms of what the Denver Nuggets do going forward, there's really not a hell of a lot of different alternatives they have at their disposal. In terms of the Western Conference Finals, Wolves and the Thunder. Before I even get to that, I think it's two. Now, I don't like what Aaron Gordon said, basically more time off in between games. If the players of yesteryear, whether it be the 2010s, the 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the bitching and moaning about getting the time off in between games, I can't take. If my opinion, they get too much time off, especially in the first round of the playoffs with 2 days off in between games, especially when in between games the series doesn't change cities. It drives me up the wall. And you notice in order for them to get the NBA champion crown in a decent amount of time in June, you see what the schedule is in the conference finals. You don't get no 2-3 days off in between games in the conference finals. You get 1 day off. It is essentially from tomorrow night up until the NBA Finals on June the 5th. It is all systems go. Game on every single night, East-West, East-West, East-West. 1 game off in between games. That means in between games 2 and 3, and 1 game off in between cities and games 5, 6, and maybe a 7th. So they're not bullshitting, and quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, that's the way it needs to be in the second round, and especially the way it needs to be in the first round. My opinion, they get too much time off in the first round to begin with anyway. And now they want more time off in between games. When do you want the NBA championship to take place? In late July? Now, what I do think the NBA needs to do in terms of the scheduling is the quick turnaround for the Thunder. I understand they're a younger team and they're a young team in general, so it may not affect them the way it would, say, example, the Lakers or the Warriors, one of the two older teams in the Western Conference when the playoffs began. But the quick turnaround, a 24-hour respite in between game 7 and game 1 of a conference final, it's a little much. It's a little much. Little much. I understand they want to have it so they're, again, they alternate game days in between conferences from this Tuesday through, I think, the 1st of June, I think, is game 7 of the West. If I'm not, either it's the game 7 of the West or game 7 of the East. So I honestly don't want to carry it any further than the first of the new month, which is a Sunday, with the finals starting June 5th, which I believe is a Wednesday, if not a Thursday. So I get that. But the 24-hour respite, I don't understand how that's conducive at all. Now I get it, the Wolves get an advantage because they had their series, done in 5 games, and the so I'm not saying it has to be equal in that regard, but you got to give them more than one day off. I mean, my goodness. And it was a blowout, so they wasn't like they had to play a white knuckler, but I think that's a tad bit unfair to the Thunder that they only get 24 hours off their feet, have a chance to decompress. Well, now again, I know it was a blowout, but still, only get one day to decompress, sigh of relief, put the Nuggets to bed till next year, relish in them, make it to a conference finals. And oh, by the way, you got Ant-Man and the crew well rested coming at you in your building for game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. And if they're not careful, they could fall asleep and fall to a 2-0 hole with their backs up against the wall by the time this series shifts to Minneapolis for games 3 and 4. So, if anything, they need to see if they can add more days off. And, scratch that. You know how you alleviate this? Why in the world was there 2 days off in between game 6 and 7? Game 6 of that series, if I'm not mistaken, was played on Thursday. They couldn't have played game 7 on a Saturday, knowing that the following series was not going to start any later than the Tuesday of this week. They played game 6 of that series on Thursday the 15th. They couldn't have played there was no NBA games on that night. They couldn't have played game 7. If you want to put in prime time, put in prime time. I don't care. You couldn't have had game 7 played on Saturday. So you give the winner Sunday and Monday off. I understand, again, you don't want it directly equal because the Timberwolves should get a little bit of a bonus advantage for their series, for getting done with their series in only 5 games, while the latter needed the full 7. So I get that, but the Timberwolves got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days off. 5 days off compared to 1 day off. That's a little bit for us. Again, it's not like it's not like football where you get the entire week off because you play every single week. Not in that regard, but it is unfair that the Timberwolves get a whole 5 days off and the Thunder only get 1. You couldn't have given them an extra day off. 5 and 2 is better than 5 and 1. Especially, again, I know it was a blowout, but basketball, they're on their feet, running back and forth, and they get off their feet. Also, have to emotionally and mentally decompress from the series they just got done with, and they got to try and ramp themselves back up for a live dog in Minnesota tomorrow night. That's not the right thing to do. Why they gave him 2 days off in between games 6 and 7, so there was no momentum, is just mind-bogglingly asinine. There was not an NBA game on to be watched on Saturday. They should have played Saturday. Play Saturday, preferably in the afternoon, so they don't, have a later, so their day doesn't run late. Play game 7, 3:30, 4, 5 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday. Give the winner Sunday off. give the winner Monday off, 1 day off to decompress from a series they just came out of, another and just to physically rest in general, and then another day off for them to get ready for Minneapolis. They would have the Thunder, because they won, won't have to worry about no travel, but still ready to play Minnesota, because this is for a championship. This is not first round to second round. This is second round to a conference final. We're trying to crown a champion here, and they only got 1 day off, which I thought was not the right thing to do. So if there's any qualms about the scheduling, it's that getting the 1 day off in between series, when the series going into is the final coup de grace for Western Conference play. Just it's flagrant malpractice by Adam Silver in the NBA. Flagrant. But in terms of the series itself, it's going to be very interesting to see. Anthony Edwards, arguably is the best player on the floor. If not, it's head to head between he and SGA. The Thunder obviously have a better team with a better and deeper roster top to bottom than Minneapolis, but they're a live dog that loves taking on that underdog role. We saw it against the LeBron and the Lakers in the first round. We saw it against Steph for the finite time he played in that series, but obviously Jimmy Butler and that experienced older team in Golden State, the former champions. So we saw it. They love it. They love and they thrive when the outside thinks they don't have a chance, either based on lack of championship pedigree, the roster compared to their opponents is not that good, or as they relish in it. They relish and they thrive in it. I think the matchup between Rudy Gobert and Chet Holmgren is going to be very interesting to see. The game planning, Chet Holmgren and obviously Isaiah Hartenstein crashing the glass, and Rudy Gobert being, the guy that can essentially do the two things that Chet Holmgren can do in one player, I think will be very enticing to see play out. But this is going to be a very, 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 very fascinating series between Minnesota and the Oklahoma City Thunder. There's just no doubt. And let's see, Ant-Man pissed off. The team was pissed off, very motivated because, they fell victim to Luka's magic in the Western Conference Finals in Dallas last year. Now you get a second bite at the apple. You were there in the conference finals last year. They weren't, albeit they were the better team throughout the course of the regular season. You got to score to settle in the Western Conference. So if Ant-Man truly is that guy and wants to take the next step to being the face of the NBA that a lot of people have already pedestalized him to being, this is your opportunity right now. Go into Oklahoma City, get a game, have it be 1-1, headed back to your place, and then we can lock in and see what's doing in games 3, 4, and maybe a fifth. But Western Conference Finals should be very interesting. Eastern Conference, similar thing. Score to settle with Indiana going up against the Knicks. Obviously, they handled their business last year to get to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. And a lot of people's eyes, people and I would tend to agree that a large part of them advancing to these conference finals is because the Knicks were an infirmary from top to bottom. They were so banged up. Brunson breaking his wrist in Game 7, weren't competitive in that game. This is going to be some high peak NBA cinema here between the Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. Tyrese Halliburton, you saw obviously how Thibodeau was able to key in and really outside of game number 4, in which Tatum was excellent. He did not play great through the first 3 games. Even in that blowout win, game number 3, that Saturday afternoon, Pritchard was the best Celtic out there on the floor, and Thibodeau and the crew did an excellent job, highlighted by the elite defensive play from OG Anunoby and by Josh Hart on shutting down Jason Tatum. You figure the same, or if not similar, thoughts and ideas are being shared on taking some of those methods and applying to how to keep Tyrese Halliburton in check, who was the best player on the floor by far against the Cavs in the second round. This is going to be a very entertaining, interesting series. Both teams can shoot the lights out when they do get hot, as we saw obviously highlighted in the second round. Um, the Knicks having home floor advantage, could it be a disadvantage? Could it work to their advantage? It all fares on how the Knicks come out in the first two games of the series on Wednesday and this upcoming Friday. I mean, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, the home court at MSG in the playoffs can work as a double-edged sword. It's on the Knicks to use it as their advantage. They go out there and play with the level of focus and intensity we saw from them in game 6 on Friday, and they play with that same intensity to start out in game 1, like we saw in game 6, and like we saw late in the fourth quarter in game number 4. That MSU crowd can work to your complete advantage, and the avalanche and the onslaught of the energy within that building can swallow an opponent whole and overwhelm him. And it also can work the other way, where if they're anxious, they're sitting on their hands because the Knicks aren't playing well, the building gets tight, and the opposition can turn MSG into their personal playpen. So it's all the home court advantage angle for the Knicks. It's going to play out however best the Knicks make it work to their advantage. It's all how MSG, how it carries the Knicks, the crowd, the atmosphere, the environment. That all predicates on how well the Knicks play at home to start this series later on this week. It could be their best of friend in this series to give them that little bit of an extra oomph, or it can be the double-edged sword that comes back and stabs them in the heart. And Tyrese Halliburton goes out there and has his Reggie Miller moments, and the next thing you know, it's the Pacers getting the best of the Knicks yet again for the second time, first time in 25 plus years. So it remains to be seen. But I think both teams are very evenly matched. I think I don't think if you could pick. I don't think you could pick, even if you would have gotten the Celtics and the Cavs. I don't think you could have picked an Eastern Conference Finals where both teams are more evenly matched than Indiana and the Knicks are. Two superstars, Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson. Whichever superstar outduels the other, that's who your Eastern Conference Final champion is going to be. It doesn't get much better than Thibodeau and Carlisle. Two great coaches have put on absolute playoff masterclasses this spring. They both deserve their flowers for getting their team to this point. Indiana going back to back last year and this year, and the Knicks, when it looked like they couldn't get out of their own way, getting their teeth kicked in by the Celtics, couldn't beat the good teams, couldn't beat Cleveland, couldn't beat Boston, couldn't beat Oklahoma City, and if them to make it to this point, beating the defending champions en route to the conference finals. Say what you want. You can have your opinions about the Knicks and Brunson and say whatever you want. You got to take your hat off and tip your hat and give them their flowers, because the Knicks at 100 and without a shadow of a doubt, without fear of contradiction, they earned their way to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. They the only way their path could have gotten harder is if they played Boston, or played Cleveland in the first round. But even no disrespect to take nothing off of Detroit, they obviously were no pushovers in the first round either. And if anything, I've heard a lot of conversation. I think that people are right. Playing the Pistons and in the nature in which how they won that series against the Pistons, I think was a blessing in disguise for the Knicks, because it allowed them to tap into a level of toughness we had not seen from them consistently since last year's crew. I think the Boston series made Karl-Anthony Towns a tougher basketball player. I think collectively it made the team tougher, brought them closer together. Jalen Brunson kind of being the villain out there in Detroit. It brought back a little bit of that old fire and brimstone element of last year's Knicks to this year's team. And I think that's one of the many reasons why they were able to get past Boston. I think that's why it's going to give them a hell of a chance to win the Eastern Conference going up against Indiana. later on this week. I think this is if you don't like this, I understand. You don't have the defending champions involved, and it's the Celtics and the brand of the Celtics. And typically, when you get to the deeper end of the pool in the postseason, you get to championship Sunday, you get to the conference finals in basketball, you get to the LCS in baseball. You like to have, if you can, have the defending, whether it be league or World Series champion, a part of the Final Four, because it gives that champion versus challenger element. It's the champion going through the slog of the regular season, winning the appropriate amount of playoff games possible to make it to this point, and now they got to go through one more hurdle just to make it back to have an opportunity to repeat. So you kind of, if you can, you want that element, and you want that element involved a little bit. The Dodgers last year, obviously, 2023, the Rangers didn't make the postseason, so you didn't have it in baseball. But football, obviously, we've seen it for the last handful of years with the Kansas City Chiefs, with them winning, with them and their Super Bowl championships. With this year around with the NBA, you wanted that, having Boston in the ball. But yeah, the next best thing, because you do have two teams that made it to the conference finals last year and lost, with an opportunity to right their wrongs here in 2025, which I think is a nice consolation prize, considering the big bad Celtics and their brand, and Tatum, and Brown, and everybody, and them being the defending champs, they're not being part of the Final Four NBA festivities. I think that's the next best thing. But having I think for every sport, even with the NBA and even with baseball, not so much, because obviously we got the nondescript Diamondbacks and Rangers World Series, and everybody and their mother hate it. But really basketball, because I think basketball, as much as it is about markets and LA and Boston and New York, and to a lesser extent Miami, NBA kind of falls in a little bit, not quite, but a little bit under the umbrella that the NFL falls under, in terms of it being more so about superstars than it is about because the NBA for over a decade has been a player driven and a player centered league, in terms of what creates the buzz and the drama and the anticipation and the conversation around its sport. But on the other hand, the NBA, like baseball, does benefit when the Lakers and the Celtics and when the Knicks, and to a lesser extent the 76ers and the Miami Heats of the world, make it deep into the post. They do benefit because let's not be crazy, they do benefit from having the big city franchises make it deep into the postseason. But I don't think they're as dependent on it as advertised, because it is a player driven league. And even though there is no LeBron, there is no Giannis, there is no Steph, there is no there is no Nikola Jokic, there is no Kawhi Leonard, but there is obviously Jalen Brunson, there is Tyrese Halliburton, there is Anthony Edwards, there is SGA, there is a Chet Holmgren, and then obviously the recognizable role players of the likes of Rudy Gobert and Isaiah Hartenstein OG Anunoby, who's a former champion, and I forgot about Carl. He's not a role player, but he's not a super. He's not a role player, and he's not the franchise superstar guy. He kind of fits sort of in that in between area, but there are some recognizable household names left within this Final Four, and I just found this out late last night. Did you guys know in the previous 70 years of the NBA, the same franchises have won 77% of the league's championships? Previous 70 years. That's what? We're about 4 generations. The same 7 teams have won 77% of the NBA's championships. And the reason why I bring that up, first time in the history of the NBA, there will be 7 different champions in 7 consecutive years. Parity is good for the NBA. Yes, they need the big star. Yes, they need the Lakers and the Celtics of the world and the Knicks involved in their playoff field. But the parity with the smaller market teams, the Denvers, The Oklahoma Cities, the Minnesotas, the Indianas of the world. The Clevelands. Those are good for the sport. It's good. It's healthy. Spreads the wealth. Spreads the national attention. It gets people, outside of the world of ESPN and all of it gets them talking about the small market teams. It makes the basketball fan that lives in Baltimore, that lives in Philly, that lives in Charlotte, that lives in Atlanta, that lives in lives in Phoenix. It helps them and it introduces them to knowing players that play on those small teams off the top of the head, not always having to know, okay, the starting five of the Celtics and the Lake. It's for the health of the league. The more basketball fans, the more people nationwide, coast to coast, know the names, know the players, and know the teams of the OKCs and the Denvers and the Indianas and the Clevelands of the world. It's healthy. It's healthy and it's good for the sport. I like it. Parody is good. Parody. I like parody, and I also like the element of the champion defending its crown. So, I mean, you can't go wrong with Indiana and New York. Indiana, Boston, second straight year. I think wouldn't have hurt either. Champion versus challenger. I love the rematches. Ravens and Patriots in AFC Championship game back years. I love it. Bengals and Chiefs back AFC Championship game in back years. Love it. I like seeing the rematch. I don't like necessarily dynasties, but I like seeing a healthy mix of the creme de la creme champion, the team that's got the big target on the back with fresh blood. I like to see that mix. I like to see, and if the big sumo champion isn't involved, doesn't bother me. Not at all. Not in the slightest. Not you got fresh blood, which is good. And even again, 2 out of the 4 teams that are in the conference finals were in it last year, but they didn't win. They didn't win. And they're young, they're fresh teams on the come up trying to get their first championship. So I don't mind it. Not at all, not in the slightest. Another order of business regarding the NBA I want to address, and I didn't address it on Thursday. Episode came out Friday, but recorded it Thursday. I didn't have a chance to because of the Orioles and the schedule coming out and playoff games and everything else. The NBA draft lottery needs to cease to exist. The fact that we determine who gets the number 1, 3, 4, 5th pick in the draft via random drawing of ping pong balls, it's got to stop. Okay? It's got to stop. I understand why they have it, because the league wants to curtail against and encourage teams not to tank. They don't like tanking. I get that, but I can't take the draft lottery as an off-season institution in regards to determining a draft order in a given offseason when the Dallas Mavericks walk away with the number 1 pick in the draft. It's just the fact that the Dallas Mavericks, it's one thing, and for the people that don't want to hear, don't want to entertain the draft lottery as rigged conspiracy theories, it'd be one thing if this was just a one-off thing. But what happened when the Cleveland Cavaliers lost LeBron James to Miami in free agency? Who ended up with the number 1 pick in the draft that offseason? The Cavs to draft Kyrie Irving. I mean, you go back, check it, not 10 years ago, 15, like a generation ago, 20, 30 something years ago. I mean, it has been, even under the days of David Stern, God rest his soul, when he was commissioner. Here's the thing with him, too. Teams lose out on a superstar via either, in the Mavs case, a dumb trade, or in the Cavaliers case with LeBron free agency. Oh, magically the Cleveland Cavaliers, even though they weren't the worst team in the NBA, they magically get the number 1 pick in the draft for them to essentially get another superstar in their former beloved superstar's place. The lottery has got to stop. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. How in the world how the Dallas Mavericks, a team that was a play-in team that made it to the NBA Finals just a season ago, is able to, that had nowhere near one of the worst records in the NBA, how they're able to get the number one pick of the draft is insulting to every Wizards, Jazz, Hornets fan. It's just and it's also insulting to the NBA public, because the NBA must think that their fans are a bunch. Some of them are, but the large sum of the NBA audience, whether it be media people or it's hardcore and or casual fan, they think and they play us for a bunch of fools, for a bunch of idiots that we don't know anything, that we can't put two and two together. I mean, and it's bad enough that also we even talked about at the time about the conspiracies that were going around in terms of the league colluding to help the Lakers, because the trade was so dumb, so off the cuff, out of thin air, and so just inexplicably random. We talked about it, not just me, but the other people within the NBA circle and on social media talked about it. Ad infinitum, how random and how weird this trade was. Like, the Lakers' older team really not doing all that hot. No one's really talking about them, a whole hell of a lot. It's the Lakers. The league loves the Lakers. They love them in the playoffs. They love them in prime time. They need them in the NBA Finals if they're good enough in the worst way. What do they need? Oh, let's give them in Luka Doncic. Get them a superstar so the Lakers franchise doesn't take a dip like it did in the post-Kobe years whenever LeBron James retires, which is sooner than we think. I mean, it's coming. Whether it's after the 25-26 season, after the 26-27 season, it's coming before this decade is over with. And there's only about, 4.5 years of this decade left to begin with anyway. So it's coming down the pipe sooner than we think. I can bring him in. Look at who they trade. Trade away Anthony Davis. And no first round draft picks. So you had that. And then they miraculously get the ping pong balls. I think had a 1% chance, and magically their 1% works in their favor. They get the appropriate amount of ping pong balls to go in their favor, that they miraculously get the number one pick. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Like, the NBA play us for a bunch of damn fools. I mean, two things are apparent. They love to placate to the franchise that lost a superstar with these draft lotteries, number one, as showcased obviously by the Cavs when LeBron left, and leading them to get the pick to get Kyrie Irving. That's number one. And number two, they love to placate to the big markets. Dallas gets the superstar or is in a position to draft another superstar, and poor Salt Lake City, Utah, Washington, D.C., I mean, they stink, and they don't get the draft lottery balls to go in their favor. You can't make it up if you try. You can't. Now, I mean, is it totally flawed? No. The 76ers shouldn't have gotten the number one pick because of the fact that that team was just a mess, and the players just didn't give a shit, and they were a bad basketball team. So they shouldn't have gotten it. Don't get me wrong. So it did work out to positive in some regard, but you can't sit up here and tell me. I mean, let me pull up the draft order right here in front of me. You can't sit up here and tell me that your draft lottery is a perfect system when the Dallas Mavericks get the number one pick in the draft when they had less than 2% odds of winning the whole damn thing. I'm sorry. And the Washington Wizards were one of the worst teams, not just in the NBA but in all of American sports in the 2024-2025 calendar window, gets the sixth pick. You can't tell me that the draft lottery is a perfect method on deciding who picks what when the worst team in the universe got the sixth pick in the draft. You can't tell me that. You can't. I'm sorry. You can't. and the Dallas Mavericks, who are a playing team, got the first pick. You can't sell that and advertise that to your fans. I know sports fans are quote unquote known as the stupid parts of American society. When it comes with we're the smartest, dumbest people on the planet. We're intelligent geniuses about stupid crap that means nothing in the big picture and the grand scheme of things. But you can't again. What I mean, where did they go this year? Let me pull up their record. I mean, they were absolutely. I mean, they were of the likes of last year. They were the Chicago White Sox of the NBA last year, and they got, and not because they actively were tanking, but they were a bad basketball team. The 24-25 Wizards went 18-64. They went 18-64, and they got the sixth pick in the draft. I mean, you got to be. I mean, that's how is Adam Silver okay with this? Really, I would love. How is Adam Silver and the people within the NBA league office? How are they okay with the? They don't even get a top 5 or a top 3 pick in the draft. They get the sixth. The sixth. I don't get it. I do not. I'm trying to pull up. Let me see if I can pull up the complete standings 1-16. But I don't know how, if you're Adam Silver in the NBA, you think this is an appropriate method of determining who picks where in the first round of the NBA draft. And this is not like football. This is not like football. This is not like baseball, where diamonds in the rough, are scattered all throughout the entire draft, where you can find all stars and Hall of Famers and future champions in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth rounds of a given draft. This is the NBA, which math wise, by virtue of just basic mathematics, is the hardest. I mean, it's got the smallest player roster out of all the 4 major sports. And if you're a good to great college prospect, it's the hardest. I mean, the hardest to go number 1 overall in. It's the hardest. Jazz went 17-65. Yeah, and the Spurs went 34-48, and they got the second pick. So the Spurs had a better record by a large margin. The Pelicans, the Jazz, the Jazz and the Wizards were right there, along with Charlotte. But the fact that even the Spurs got the better, the Spurs went 34-48 and actually were in contention to make the play-in until they were about to shut down and eventually did shut down Wembanyama for the year. Were right there in contention for the play-in, and they got the number 2 pick. And the Dallas Mavericks went 39-43, only 5 games under 500, were the last team in to make and qualify for the play-in, and they get the number 1 pick in the draft. I mean, that's like in the NFL this year. That's like the Bengals that's like the NFL holding a draft lottery, which I hope and pray to the good Lord above. Why, by the way, Schefter and Greeny, Mike Greenberg said, well, the NFL should look into implementing a draft a lot. I mean, that literally would kill. You could add all the international games and the 18, 19, you could add a 25th game to the regular season. The NFL implementing a draft lottery literally would kill the NFL as we well know it. I mean, that is essentially the equivalent of the Bengals getting the number 1 pick in the draft. That's like the Bengals, the Colts, or the Seattle Seahawks, or the Atlanta Falcons, or the Dallas Cowboys. That's like the Cowboys, Bengals, or Seahawks getting the number 1 pick in the NFL draft via a draft lottery. That's how egregious that is. Made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Going to reward Nico Harrison either for being a pawn in a collusion scheme or just flagrant GM malpractice and basketball stupidity. Going to award him and his team by giving him the number one pick in the draft and drafting Cooper Flagg. Dumb. The NBA draft lottery is a complete and utter disaster, and it needs to go and needs to go pronto. Have it the old-fashioned way. Decide the order by winning percentage and record against common opponent. I mean, if it's good for the NFL, it's good for the NBA. It's just I say want to go on a work against tanking, but this is not the healthy solution either. Unless literally you come up with a system where you have to not make the playoffs or the play-in to even be eligible to get a top five and to get a top five draft pick through the draft lottery. Like they have to either get rid of it altogether or put a clause in where the top five worst teams, record-wise by winning percentage, get the opportunity to play out within that draft lottery to get that top five pick. Something has to be done because the way that they've been going at it for well over a decade, 2 decades plus, is not the answer to a problem that is plaguing the NBA and is having its integrity brought into tremendous question. Thinking, do I want to do baseball or do I want to talk about Brock Purdy? I'll end on Brock Purdy. Let me get to the baseball first. First of all, before I get to the Subway Series, let me just give the 2 flowers to Pete Crow Armstrong, who has been absolutely magnificent for the Chicago Cubs here to start the year as my Twitter. Okay, there you go. Do you guys know that Pete Crow Armstrong is on pace to hit 41 home runs, have 48 stolen bases, 131 RBIs on 124 runs scored? I mean, he right now, believe it or not, is right there at the top of the list in the thick of things for National League MVP if you want to get into such conversation on May the 19th. And if you care about that dopey WAR stat for you Ohtani Glazers out there, he's got a better WAR than Shohei Ohtani. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Through 47 games this season, 12 home runs, 11 doubles, 38 RBIs. Magnificent. I understand who in the world's watching the Chicago Cubs on a game in, game out basis. Who is this guy? And wouldn't know Pete Crow Armstrong if he fell on me. But here's a guy right now. If you care about that asinine WAR stat, he's got a WAR that leads the best among active participating qualifying players in the National League with a 3.0 WAR. He currently has a 290 batting average, 325 on-base percentage, 585 slugging, a 153 slugging plus, OPS plus, with an OPS of 909, 12 home runs, 38 RBIs in 47 games on 197 plate appearances. And he has certainly, without a shadow of a doubt, has played an enormous, ginormous leading hand in the Chicago Cubs, currently right now atop the NL Central, 2 games up on the Cardinals with a record of 28 and 19. Winners of 6 out of their last 10, riding a 3-game winning streak. Pete Crow Armstrong. Salute to him. He's played his ass off through the first month and a half of the 2025 campaign. Wanted to give him some flowers here on today's show. The Cubs, by the way, coming off of a weekend series sweep of their crosstown rival White Sox at Wrigley. Took 2 out of 3 from the Marlins in their place. They're in Miami for a 3-game series set on the front end of this week against the Marlins. Off day Thursday, they hit the road and take on the Cincinnati Reds in Cincinnati coming up this weekend. And they get another break with the Rockies to close out the month of May at home, and then the Reds again. And then June, they open up with the Nationals on the road, and then things get hairy with the Tigers and the Phillies back-to-back in Detroit, and then Philly before they come back home to play the measly Pittsburgh Pirates, the mid-Milwaukee Brewers, and the solid Seattle Mariners, and then the Cardinals and then the Astros to close out the month of June, heading into the thick of the summer. But I wanted to give Pete Crow Armstrong his flowers here to start the baseball talk, non-Orioles baseball talk here on this segment, of today's show. And then the other part is the Subway Series. Yankees taking 2 out of 3 from the New York Metropolitans over the weekend. But I think the bit now, if you want to break down the game, well, I might as well go last night. Max Fried has been an absolutely tremendous signing for the New York Yankees. Give Brian Cashman all the tremendous credit in the world for bringing him on. When he starts games, the Yankees don't lose. The antithesis of the Orioles and Charlie Morton is his former teammate Max Fried and the Yankees. When he starts games, the Yankees straight up don't lose. Put up an absolutely masterful performance against the Mets yesterday. He did allow the game, though, to get tied via a wild pitch last night, but still put together a hell of an outing last night against the Mets on Sunday Night Baseball. Nevertheless, get you his line here in about 10 seconds. Put together a masterful performance. 6 innings of 3-hit, 2-run, 8-strikeout baseball was absolutely magnificent for the Yankees. Obviously, the grand slam hit by Cody Bellinger in the 8th inning blew the game open. But the deciding factor in that game, obviously, the Mets defensively, especially within the infield, they are not very good. How Pete Alonso has allowed his throwing woes to carry as far and deep into his career as he has, highlighted by that egregious throwing error that gave the Yankees the initial 3-2 lead there in the 8th inning, is just completely inexcusable. Routine ground ball, not a bang play. Had plenty of time to make the solid throw to home plate. You can't airmail it and essentially gift the Yankees the go-ahead run of the game in the bottom of the 8th in that fashion. And once he threw away that ball, you knew the Mets were not going to win. And then the grand slam by Bellinger, as my iPad falls, the grand slam by Bellinger all but, had the game signed, sealed, and delivered in favor of the Yankees. They got a solid starting performance from Peterson, 6 innings of 1 run, 3-hit ball, 4 strikeouts. Solid performance, but, bullpens come down to earth a little bit. As the same with their starting pitching was not good in their loss on Friday night. Had a huge problem against the Yankees on Friday night. Getting guys out was not a memorable performance in their 6-2 loss, highlighted by a substandard performance from Tyler McGill. Couldn't make it out of the 3rd inning, gave up 4 runs on 4 hits, had a hard time with his command as well. And took the Mets bats right out of the game from the early get-go. Carlos Rodon, we talked about when we talked with Pete Simonetti at the beginning of the month of May, how he's been able to ride the ship. He's pitching to a 3.17 ERA so far in his most recent collection of starts. He's won 3 out of his last 5 starts, to say the least. Did not pitch well last time out last weekend against the A's in Sacramento. Got knocked around a little bit. Struck out 10, gave him 6 innings, but did not pitch well in that game, but has put together a solid performance here against the Mets, and really has put together a handful of solid performances lately. Pitched well, albeit the Yankees lost that game 4-3 against the Padres. Pitched well 6 2/3 of shutout ball, and 2 starts ago his second most previous outing at Yankee Stadium on Monday, the 5th of the month. Pitched obviously well, 2 runs, 2 hits, 6 innings of 7 strikeout ball against my Orioles on the 29th. And then before that, against the Guardians, 7 innings of 4-hit, 1-run baseball, 8 strikeouts against the Cleveland Guardians. So Carlos Rodon has obviously pitched well. The Mets starting pitchers come back down to earth. Their inability to get the big back-breaking hit a la a Bellinger grand slam with runners in scoring position. They were able to get away with it through the first month of the season. They were able to win in spite of being below average offensively with runners in scoring position. Now, as their starting pitchers starting to come back down to earth recently, it's starting to become more and more of a bigger problem for the Mets, albeit, yes, they are 28 And no, excuse me, they are what's their record? That's their record after they lost on Friday. After they lost yesterday, they are 29-18, but they are an average team away from Citi Field, 12-13, away from the friendly confines in Queens, which is a problem if they don't find a way to put together some wins on the road going forward. And we thought through the first month of the season they're going to run away and hide with the National League East. Now it's not the case. Albeit they're 6-4 in their last 10 games, but only a half game separates them between them and the Philadelphia Phillies for first place in the East. The Atlanta Braves finally got themselves together, got back to 500, eclipsed the 500 mark. Currently 24-23, winners of 6 out of their last 10 games. They are a quiet 5 games back of the New York Mets for first place in the National League East. You take a look at the Mets and their schedule. I get to Soto here in a minute, but they got an upcoming series against the Red Sox, who have been struggling, teetering on at and around the 500 mark in the American League East. They got the Red Sox at Fenway this week, and then they come back home. Then they got the Dodgers, and then, like I said about a show or so ago, a nice reprieve with the White Sox and the Rockies in the building. But a little bit murderer's row here. Yankees, a desperate Red Sox team on the road in their ballpark, and then home against the Dodgers in a rematch against the NLCS. So the starting pitchers got to find a way to get themselves back in gear. I did not like the stuff I saw, obviously, from McGill, and Peterson got himself a little bit of trouble here and there last night. The command, you have to worry about, and not giving out a lot of free passes. And the Mets did walk the ballpark a hell of a lot in their 2 losses on Friday and last night, which is something they got to tend to. Getting the big hit with runners in scoring position offensively for them collectively as a team has been a major problem. Pete Alonso's come back down to earth. He's hit about $167 in his last handful of games recently, so he's come back down to earth. And then when he's throwing the ball into the damn camera well on a bang-bang routine, or not on a non-bang-bang routine ground ball hit directly to him with the infield in a tie game in the 8th inning, that's not going to help matters much either. And then lastly, the final thing with the Mets is Juan Soto. I mean, he has been a shell of himself, got one lousy hit throughout this entire series, did strike out a handsome amount this weekend. It's not going to cut it. Now, they were able to get away with him not playing well. That's not going to cut it. They were able to get away with him not playing well when Pete Alonso was hitting the cover off the ball, and they were hitting collectively. Now that Alonso's come back down to earth, it's kind of sort of been the Frankie Lindor show. Starlin Marte is a complete liability. He can't hit 200, and he's the team's designated hitter. That's a problem. They really don't have a center fielder. They're not really hitting. They did not hit well really at all this weekend. Scored 3 runs in game 2, 2 runs Friday, 2 runs last night. Their hitting has fallen into a tremendous slump, and this is where Juan Soto, guy making over $700 million, that big-ass contract he signed, this is the opportunity now where he, as a superstar and supposedly the joint alpha dog on that team along with Lindor, is where he's got to step up, play worth his contract, and answer the bell. And he has not done that. He has been very passive in terms of, I think, his approach at the plate, is the aggressiveness and the swagger that we saw when he was a Yankee clearly has not been there in the last handful of games, especially highlighted by this series. You would think he would be hyped and motivated and just like a foaming at the mouth like a rabid dog, just waiting and yearning for the opportunity to stick and rub the Yankees' nose in him leaving to join the crosstown rival Mets. And he essentially was a lapdog throughout the course of the weekend. He was a lapdog, and that's not going to cut it. Not going to cut it for the Mets. When Alonso's not hitting, when the majority of the lineup is not hitting, they got to get runs and score runs to tie games up based on wild pitches and soft hit singles, and rely on errors from Anthony Volpe and bad mistakes made in the field by him, like we saw on Saturday. That's not a long-term recipe for success. I get it, 162. It comes with even the very good to great teams that play well in the regular season go through their ebbs and flows where they play essentially like a third or a fourth place team. I get it. but it's something that the Mets are going to have to account for, and it's something that Juan Soto has to account for, and blowing off the media when you play like shit for the most part in your revenge series against the Yankees in the Bronx. No bueno. No bueno, mi hombre. That's not good enough. That's not going to fly in this city. It's not going to fly with the Met fan. That's not going to play. That's not going to play. You can't stink up the joint, and especially in a series that essentially was all about you because of your decision to come here, and then you play like garbage and you blow off the media. That is not going to cut it. You gotta be willing to face the music and be willing to held accountable. Because the Yankee fan is not going to, nor should they. And if I was in their shoes, I would be the same way. They're not going to let you forget the fact that everything, at least on the surface, came together. It seemed like you were going to be a Yankee for life. You fit like a glove with the short porch and right, the pinstripes. Hate to say it, looked good on you. You were the perfect yin and yang to Aaron Judge in the regular season and Stanton in the postseason like we saw last October. I mean, you made the Yankees a better team, top to bottom, and you took them to a place they hadn't been in 15 years, and that's the World Series. And you hit a game-winning home run in Game 5 of the ALCS to send them there. And he decided to chase the bag. Yankee fans' eyes sell out. Now he looks essentially like a miserable New York Met. We can read all the gossip columns. The eye test does not lie. He looks borderline damn near miserable as a Met to start. Whether it's attached to the fact that he low-key has remorse and wishes that he could have stayed in New York, or he's allowing his bad play to sink his attitude. Whatever's the case, it's got to stop. Because the longer this lingers deeper and deeper into the season, the bigger of a problem it's going to become. It's got to get nipped in the bud. I don't know if he's got to just go out and just do one great big, laughable stunt, to kind of force his way into being ingratiated into being a New York Met and letting the New York Yankee part of him, die in the weeds. Something. I mean, we didn't even get a Soto shuffle. Something. Because mentally and physically, Juan Soto's in the clouds. I mean, his lack of hustle on that, I'm going to pull it up here so I can see it as I'm talking about it here in a minute. His lack of hustle on that ground ball he hit the second base with the game tied at 2 apiece, I believe, in that 8th inning is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, the lack of hustle, that's not going to fly. With the money you're making, all the attention and the eyeballs you brought, and then I understand it was a routine ground ball hit to the middle part of the infield, but the lack of hustle coming out the box, like 50-pound bricks are attached to your ankles. That's not the Met fan is not going to tolerate that, nor should they. That's unacceptable. Completely and utterly unacceptable. Coming out the box slow, lackadaisical. It's like he walked and then sprinted and then walked when he got to first base. It's not going to fly. Not going to fly. So Juan Soto needs to get himself together. They need to tighten themselves up defensively, especially in the infield. And the bullpen going through a little bit of a rough patch. We'll see how the Mets adjust going forward here with this series coming up this week in Beantown. And finally, Brock Purdy, 5 years, $265 million contract extension. Been waiting to get to this. The San Francisco 49ers overpaid for this. They massively overpaid. And before I hear anyone sit up here and tell me, oh, well, Jai, the going rate for quarterbacks is, you got to pay them 50 and 60, $65 million a year. This is what the going rate is. This is how much Tua is making. This is how much Herbert's making. This is how much Jalen Hurts is making. This is how much Allen and Lamar and Burrow and Mahomes. This is all. Just because that's what the going rate is doesn't mean teams should pay that. Unless there's something that goes on in these negotiating rooms that I don't know about, players up for contracts and their agents do not walk in to John Lynch's or any GM's office, holds a gun to their head and says, if you don't give my player a contract deal for X amount of years and X amount of dollars, I'll blow your damn brains out in front of your entire family. They don't. This is not an episode of Power or Ghost or The Wire or The Sopranos. Okay, they don't negotiate that way. They don't negotiate that way. Just because that's what the going rate is for quarterbacks doesn't mean that teams with a quarterback up for contract have to pay it. Especially teams such as the San Francisco 49ers, an aging team with a closing Super Bowl window with let's be honest, a mid quarterback. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Again, for all of you people out there, and you can sit up and give me all the empty records and his win-loss record since been that quarterback of the front. You can give me all of that fluff until the cows come home. All I know is when Brock Purdy's and the 49ers championship hopes were on the table in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, Brock Purdy overthrew, and I still got the freaking notes from the game. So how you like them apples? I don't forget anything. I got the notes right here on my iPad, and go back and listen. I said it at the time on February, what day was that? February the 12th of last year. I said two things, highlighted it. He overthrew Deebo Samuel when they were down 3. 14 minutes ago in the fourth quarter on the 1st and 10, overthrew Deebo Samuel, which had he completed that pass, would have gotten a touchdown, and Deebo in stride was wide open, and Brock Purdy missed him. If he hits Deebo in stride, it's a touchdown. It's 17-13 San Francisco early in the fourth quarter. He hits him in stride, it is a touchdown. He overthrew him, he missed him. And then after that, he had not one, but two opportunities to put the ball in the end zone to close the game in the overtime, and he failed to do so. And when you blitz the hell out of him, he collapses like a cheap tin. We saw it by the job that Spagnuolo and the Chiefs defense did in the Super Bowl, and we saw it about 4 or 5 weeks earlier against the Ravens defense Christmas night. When you put a stout pass rush in front of Brock Purdy, and this is a Brock Purdy that's 6'1", he shows shades of athleticism, but not one of the more overwhelming, dynamic, athletic QBs in the NFL. He's got average measurables, average physical intangibles with an aging offensive line. Trent Williams, his left tackle, is not getting any younger. Aging offensive line, highlighted by an aging blindside blocker, and Brock Purdy does not have the mobility of the likes of a Josh Allen, of a Mahomes, of a Lamar Jackson, and he does not have the elite stealthy pocket presence and escapability measures of the likes of a Joe Burrow. He doesn't. Nor does he have the arm talent and the physical speed of the other quarterbacks. Does not have Mahomes or Josh Allen's arm talent. Doesn't have Lamar Jackson's escapability and his breakaway speed in the open. Doesn't have any of that. On top of that, he doesn't have any of those guys' MVPs. And eye test wise, he doesn't hold a candle to Joe Burrow. Both Super Bowl losers, I get it. Eye test wise, What quarterback would you rather have based on measurables, based on the eye test, and based on the numbers? Numbers-wise, it's closer than you may think, but even with the eye test and everything else, you take Joe Burrow. You'd be a fool not to take Joe Burrow over Brock Purdy. A fool. And Joe Burrow's arm is not to be slept on either. His ability to throw on the run, escape pressure, keep plays alive with his legs. There's so many things Joe Burrow does better than Brock Purdy. It's not even funny. And Mahomes and Allen and Lamar, I mean, those guys, it goes without saying. Not to mention Jalen Hurts, who just won a Super Bowl and is reigning Super Bowl MVP. And he's not better than any of those guys. He's not better than Lamar, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, or Jalen Hurts. At best, he's the sixth best quarterback in the league. At best. And even if he is sixth, there's a large gap between he and Allen, he and Lamar, he and Mahomes, he and Hurts, he and Burrow. You can hate it, loathe it, whatever you want. Those are the facts. He had two opportunities with the ball in the end zone in the overtime against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and he failed to do so. He had an opportunity to get a much-needed touchdown there in the fourth quarter. We had Debo open in stride, and he failed to deliver the goods. He was aight in that. He wasn't terrible. He was aight. He was far from great, and he left a laundry list of plays on the table that should have won San Francisco that game. He did not at any point in time take that game, or at least make a noticeable attempt to take that game by the horns for San Francisco. San Francisco, and it showed through Kyle Shanachoke's game planning and play calling, especially in that second half. They tried to play not to lose and tried to do whatever they could to make sure that Brock Purdy was not going to not going to lose San Francisco that Super Bowl. And whenever a coach either game plans or allows their team to play not to lose, or play to hide a player or keep a player from losing them a given game, what does that tell you? Is that they don't have enough confidence, or straight up the player is just not good enough to take over a game and win the team a game, or in this case, a championship by themselves. So caution to the wind and go out there and win a championship for me. And Brock Purdy is not that guy. Never has been that guy, never will be that guy. Nice quarterback, nice player, not bad, not terrible, above average, but he ain't great. He ain't great. You in good conscience would not take Brock Purdy over the five quarterbacks I named. Wouldn't. Two of them Super Bowl champions, two of them MVPs, and the other one doesn't have the MVP, doesn't have a Super Bowl, but in some people's eyes, collectively, measurables, everything else, could be the better pound-for-pound quarterback skill-wise than all four of the previous ones. Two-time Comeback Player of the Year award for what it's worth, if you care about that stat. But for them to go out their way and to pay Brock Purdy a handsome contract extension and essentially be okay with blowing up their team, I mean, they let a decent amount of defensive talent walk in March, and they had to give away Debo Samuel. Got a fifth-round draft. Now, he was washed to begin with anyway, but let him go. And what made Brock Purdy so special in that 2023 season? The talents of Debo, Ayuk, George Kittle when he played, CMC, who was the best player and the MVP on that football team, was not. And any single time the best player or the MVP of on a contending football team is not the quarterback, that raises an eyebrow for me. Lamar Jackson, best player on throwing last year out the window with Derrick Henry, because in my opinion, it was a toss-up between the two of them. But 23, 22 in the seasons prior, best player on the field for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson. Best player on the field for the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen. Best player on the field for the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. Best player on the field for the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow. The only caveat in this situation is Jalen Hurts. That's the only caveat. But, he was magnificent in the Super Bowl, and deservedly so, won Super Bowl MVP because he was the best quarterback out there on the field. But even in that, he's the only caveat. But in the Super Bowl he played, his second one, even in the first one, he put up two magnificent. His only blemish in his two appearances in the Super Bowl was that fumble that got taken back by Bolton on the scoop and score, which turned out to be the difference in the game outside of the holding call there at the end. But in his two Super Bowl appearances, he was magnificent. He did everything he could. Jalen Hurts did everything in his power to win to try and help win them the first game against Kansas City, and he came up just a play or two short. And then what we saw back in February of this calendar year of last football season, he was the best player out there on the field, not on defense for the Philadelphia Eagles. Brock Purdy, when have we ever said that? I mean, Jalen Hurts, he was so aggressive, and that's the thing also you got to take into account with these quarterbacks. I would rather have a quarterback that's so aggressive, that is such a fierce competitor, that's such a playmaker, that they're willing to take a risk to a point where they do fumble the ball trying to avoid an imposing defender scrambling outside. I would rather have a quarterback that would take that risk of putting the football in harm's way, trying to make a play. I would rather have a Jalen Hurts than a Brock Purdy, a guy that's going to, where's my football? A guy that's going to run, trying to avoid the pressure, trying to avoid getting sacked, scrambling out the pocket, using his legs, using his athleticism to make a play, and just the ball gets knocked out. I would rather have a quarterback that's going to take that risk. And if he's going to execute 9 out of 10 plays and that one bad play doesn't execute, I'll take that risk. But you notice also, too, Jalen Hurts still came up firing and swinging. It didn't take any wind out of his sail after that fumble. And then what he do? Had a bad 2023. It came back 2024 and was magnificent in the postseason and arguably put together the best game he's ever had as a pro in that Super Bowl. Brock Purdy, you're not getting that out of him. All due respect. Even down to the things in the athleticism and all in the escapability and the physical toughness and the ability to run through defenders in the open field and the underrated arm talent that Hurts has. You're not even getting that from Brock Purdy, let alone that mental intangible of saying, the hell with everything. It's Super Bowl. I'm trying to go out there and win a championship. Throw caution to the wind with discipline, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to help my team to win a championship. That's what you see Jalen Hurts do. That's what you see Patrick Mahomes do. When Brock Purdy doesn't even come up to Joe Burrow or Allen or Lamar's level in that, where he says, "The hell with everything. I'm gonna try to win my team a championship." When you got to play not to lose and play to avoid your quarterback making a mistake in a playoff game, especially in the Super Bowl, that fourth quarter specifically in that Super Bowl told me all I needed to know about Brock Purdy. Told me all I needed to know. So I don't like the fact that the 49ers essentially sacrificed their future and sacrificed their cap space when their championship window, was closing right before their very eyes to begin with anyway. And I think if you heard the show I did after they got their teeth kicked in by the Bills in the snow, it's officially over with. For them to go out there and to pay him that absorbent money for mid, I don't see it. Sacrificing the future of your team, putting yourself in a point where you must draft well in order for you to have a halfway decent roster. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't. Not at all. Multiple opportunities he had to win the 49ers that game. That was a winnable game that the Chiefs literally slept walk for 3 quarters, and not one time did Brock Purdy take the bull by the horns and put his team on his back and deliver them to the Lombardi. Not one time. And I'm supposed to believe he's going to do it when his team got older, worse because they lost talent, and they're getting an aging Christian McCaffrey that's got a long injury history back when he played essentially half the year last year. And they're going to bank on George Kittle's not getting any younger, who's got an injury history of his own, with an aging offensive line, and counting on the likes of a Brandon Ayuk, who probably deep down doesn't even want to be there half the time, and Ricky Pearsall, and I'm entrusting Brock Purdy to essentially be the Burrow, the Mahomes, the Josh Allen of his team, and in an effort to deliver him a Lombardi. No, I don't see it. Don't see it. Don't agree with it. I think this could blow up in their face tremendously. I just do not see how Brock Purdy, based on what I've seen and just the eye tests and the measurables and everything, I don't see how he can. I understand that conference is weak. It's Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff, and every quarterback is either mid, on their way out the door, or downright bad. But still, I mean, all things being fair and equal, he's not even the best quarterback in his own division, and I don't even think it's even close. I'd take a 37-38 Matthew Stafford over Brock Purdy in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. I saw again, much to my chagrin, it still makes me sick, but I saw Matthew Stafford put the Rams on his back and lead a game-winning drive in the Super Bowl. And that game was just as much up for grabs against my Bengals as the 49er Chiefs Super Bowl was 2 years ago. So don't give me none of this garbage. He was going up against Mahomes. Mahomes is better. I don't want to hear that shit. Both of those games were just as much up for grabs, one in the fourth quarter as the other one. So I don't even give me that excuse. Brock Purdy played not to lose, and Matthew Stafford saw a championship on the table, and he took it. So I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it. They're going to rue the day they give him that contract extension. Mark my words. They are going to rue the day they gave him that contract extension. They got Fred Warner earlier this afternoon paid, and they're just going to have to roll with the punches from there. And that division is not getting any weaker. The Seattle Seahawks only are going to get better with more experience with that young football team, with that young head coach. I know how much better they're going to get this year compared to last year. Who knows? But they're only going to get better going forward. The Rams, although Stafford is not going to be around for too much longer, they're getting better. And the Cardinals shouldn't be any pushover either, unless Kyler Murray plays like a top 5 worst quarterback in the National Football League. And that rest of that conference, outside of, even down to the Giants, that conference is not. The Giants are going to be now. It's not going to necessarily show in the win-loss column because their schedule is literally the hardest in football. But they are even on some element is going to be a better football team. That conference got a whole lot better throughout the course of this current ensuing offseason. No, I understand the 49ers schedule is, it's a cupcake walk, but that would have done them a tremendous favor last year, not this year. This year, again, Brock Purdy is not him. Never has been, never will be. That'll do it. Another episode of the I'm Telling Like It TIS podcast in the books. new to the show, like what you heard, please don't hesitate to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, the works at the J Shield. Until Friday, peace. We are gone.